The story began with a text from my mother. I replied, "Have a good time." They had no clue I owned a $6 million estate. I invited everyone, they left out. When the Thanksgiving photos hit social media, my phone exploded. So, let's start from the beginning. My name is Scarlett. I'm 32. I was a tech entrepreneur, dividing my life between Boston and Colorado. I thought I understood how things worked until that text arrived in early November. "Hi, Scarlett. Your father and I decided to keep Thanksgiving small this year. We're only inviting Grace, Steven, and the kids. Hope you understand. Love you." I stared at my phone for a solid minute. Then I typed back, "Have a good holiday," and set it down. Arguing was pointless. You see, I've spent my entire life in my older sister Grace's shadow. She was the homecoming queen, the cheerleading captain, the straight-A student, flawless in every way. My parents worshipped the ground she walked on. I was 12 when I came home bursting with pride after winning second place at the regional science fair. My project was on computer algorithms. I marched into the kitchen, ribbon in hand, ready for my moment. My mother barely glanced up from her phone. "That's sweet, honey," she said, then immediately turned to my father. "Did you hear? Grace made the varsity cheer squad as a sophomore. The coach says she's the best he's seen in years." My dad lit up. "We have to call everyone. This is incredible." I went in my room, pinned the ribbon to my bulletin board, and that was the last anyone ever said about it. When I was 15, I taught myself Python over 3 sleepless nights and built a program to organize our family photos by date and location. Proud, I showed my dad. He looked at the screen for 5 seconds. "That's neat, Scarlett. By the way, did you hear Grace made the royal court for the fall dance? We're taking her dress shopping this weekend." Just like that, my accomplishment vanished. The real blow came when I got into MIT for computer science with a partial scholarship. I announced it at dinner, my hands trembling. My mom just nodded. "That's far from home." My dad added, "Well, if that's what you want to do." No celebration. No congratulations. Grace looked up from her phone, said "cool," and went back to texting. College was a lonely chapter. I moved to Cambridge for MIT, and my parents rarely called, maybe once a month if I was lucky. They were perpetually wrapped up in Grace's world. During my sophomore year, she married Steven. The wedding was enormous. 8 bridesmaids in matching lilac dresses processed down the aisle. 8. I wasn't one of them. Grace chose her sorority sisters, high school friends, even Steven's sister, but not me. At the reception, I ended up in the kitchen, helping the catering staff, while Grace performed a choreographed dance with her bridesmaids. My mother wept happy tears. My father toasted his perfect daughter. No one noticed my seat was empty. That established the unspoken rule for all future holidays. I'd show up for Thanksgiving or Christmas, and within the hour, I'd be at the sink washing dishes while Grace held court in the living room with Steven and their kids. My parents would be on the floor, utterly absorbed by their grandchildren. In my entire 4 years at MIT, they never once visited me. Not once. Yet they vacationed with Grace and Steven twice during that time, Florida and California, flooding Facebook with photos of beaches, Disneyland, and endless smiles. I graduated from MIT in the top 15% of my class. My parents attended the ceremony but left immediately afterward. One of Grace's kids had a birthday party. We didn't even go for a congratulatory dinner. After graduation, I worked at several tech firms in Boston. The jobs were fine, but I craved more. I wanted to build something myself. At 26, I launched my first startup. It failed after 18 months. I burned through my savings, maxed out 2 credit cards, and was left with nothing but debt and hard lessons. I called my parents, hoping for a lifeline. My dad answered, "Scarlett, I hate to say I told you so. But business isn't for everyone. You're just not built for it. Find a stable job with good benefits." Then my mom got on. "Your father's right. Look at Grace. She's thriving at that investment firm. Maybe ask her for advice on being more practical." I said I had to go and hung up. I didn't cry. I just sat in my apartment, staring at the wall. I moved into a cramped apartment with 3 roommates. My room barely fit a pull-out sofa. My desk was an old door balanced on two filing cabinets. It was dismal, but it was all I could afford. Then I landed a job at Digital Innovations. I was good at it. I climbed fast, junior developer, team lead, then director of product development. After 3 years, I was finally earning real money and felt a flicker of confidence. But the itch to build my own thing hadn't faded. At 29, I quit. I poured every cent I had into founding CyberShield, a cybersecurity software company. Starting over after a failure felt ludicrous. My roommates thought I'd lost my mind. The first 6 months were a grind. I downgraded to an even smaller apartment, survived on instant noodles, and worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. I often passed out at my laptop, waking up with keyboard imprints on my cheek. Some nights, I lay awake convinced I'd made a catastrophic error, that my parents were right, I wasn't cut out for this. After 3 months, my funds were nearly gone. I called my dad, one last try. "Dad, I need help. Just a small loan to keep things going for a couple more months. I'll pay you back with interest." He sighed deeply into the receiver. "Scarlett, I warned you. Business isn't your thing. Stop wasting your time and get a real job." Then his tone shifted, bright with pride. "By the way, Grace just got promoted to senior analyst. She's doing so well." I hung up without a goodbye. I never asked them for anything again. But here's the truth about success. Sometimes, luck plays a part. Sometimes the timing aligns perfectly, or your product solves a problem everyone else overlooked. Or maybe, you simply persevere long enough for the pieces to finally fall into place. That's what happened with CyberShield. I didn't announce my success. Not at first. I continued to attend family Thanksgivings and Christmases, allowing my parents and Grace to believe I was still just getting by. They'd inquire about my work with that particular brand of pity reserved for projects they deemed destined to fail. "So, how's that little computer business?" my mom would ask, already turning to wipe a grandchild's cheek. "It's coming along," I'd reply. Grace would give my hand a condescending pat. "It's so admirable that you keep trying. Not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur, and that's okay." I'd offer a thin smile and steer the conversation elsewhere. 2 years after founding CyberShield, the company employed over 100 people, with offices spanning Boston, Denver, and Austin. We secured contracts with Fortune 500 companies, government departments, and global banks. Our software was safeguarding data for millions. Last year, when I was 31, a technology giant expressed interest in an acquisition. Negotiations stretched over 4 months. My world became a whirlwind of lawyers, financial advisors, and sharply dressed executives discussing valuations and market penetration. They purchased CyberShield for $320 million. In the boardroom after the final signatures, I felt a hollow numbness. The magnitude of it refused to sink in. It wasn't until I returned to my Boston apartment, sank onto my couch, and stared at the familiar walls that the reality hit me. I laughed a loud, unrestrained burst of laughter that dissolved into tears of sheer, bewildered relief. My first purchase was a penthouse in Boston. Not overly ostentatious, but a serene, sunlit space with sweeping views of the harbor. Then, I turned my attention to Colorado, a place that had always felt like a balm for my soul, all rugged mountains, open skies, and profound quiet. I found an estate about an hour from Denver, 6 bedrooms, a guest house, and 50 acres of land crowned with panoramic mountain vistas. The price was $6 million. I didn't hesitate. I invested another $1 million into renovations, hiring an interior designer, a landscape architect, and a team of contractors. I wanted flawlessness. To oversee it all, I brought on a property manager named William. By October, the transformation was complete. The result was breathtaking, a harmony of stone, timber, and glass, with massive windows that turned the surrounding peaks into living art. The guest house, with its 3 cozy bedrooms, was ready for visitors. The main house was a personal sanctuary, featuring a chef's kitchen, a wood-paneled library, a state-of-the-art home theater, and a full gym. I wandered through the silent, elegant rooms and let myself imagine Thanksgiving. I pictured inviting my entire family, finally unveiling the life I had built, sharing the success that had always been met with indifference. I envisioned my parents, their potential pride. Perhaps this would change everything. Then, my mother's text arrived, the one that read, "We're keeping it small this year. Just Grace's family." I sat on my terrace, the chill mountain air sharp in my lungs, and gazed at the endless horizon. Something inside me didn't break, it settled. The last flicker of hope extinguished, leaving not anger or pain, but a crystal-clear resolve. I was finished. I picked up my phone and began dialing. First, Uncle Nicholas. "Hey, any plans for Thanksgiving?" "No," he sighed. "Your parents said they're doing an intimate thing, just immediate family." "Immediate family," I echoed. "I see. Well, how would you like to spend it in Colorado?" "I just bought a place here." "Colorado?" "Absolutely. That sounds incredible." Aunt Laura shared the same story. My parents had told her the gathering was being scaled back. I called cousins, second cousins, lifelong family friends. Every single person relayed the same message. They had all been uninvited. My parents were celebrating with immediate family only. I made call after call. 23 people had been cut. On my 24th call, I reached Aunt Brenda, my mother's sister. She was brutally frank. "Your parents don't want us there," she said, her voice tight. "We don't measure up to Stephen's family, all those doctors and lawyers. Your mom said she wants to impress them. We're apparently not good enough anymore." I thanked her and ended the call. The truth was laid bare. My parents had disinvited 24 relatives because they weren't deemed prestigious enough for Grace's in-laws. I sat in the profound quiet of my new home for one long minute. Then I started texting. I invited everyone to Colorado: Uncle Nicholas, Aunt Laura, Aunt Brenda, every cousin, every extended relative, every old family friend. I invited key former employees from Cyber Shield and my 2 closest friends from MIT, the ones who had stood by me through everything. Nearly every response was an immediate, enthusiastic yes. The guest list swelled to 35. I arranged first-class flights for everyone, booked private car services from Denver International Airport directly to the estate. For those who wouldn't fit in the houses, I reserved luxurious suites at a boutique hotel 20 minutes away. I hired a chef named Marco, formerly of a Michelin-starred Denver restaurant, a professional photographer, and ordered enough food for a small town. In every bedroom, I placed personalized welcome gifts: a top-tier fly rod for Uncle Nicholas, the avid fisherman; a genuine Art Deco bracelet for Aunt Laura, the vintage jewelry collector; toys and books for all the children. William and I spent 2 weeks in a whirlwind of preparation. The estate had never looked more magnificent. Fresh flowers graced every room. The kitchen was a chef's dream, fully provisioned for Marco. Every guest room was adorned with pristine, luxurious linens. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I was in that kitchen with Marco, finalizing the menu, when my phone rang. Grace's name flashed on the screen. I nearly let it go to voicemail. "Hi, Scarlett," her voice came through. "Just wanted to see what you're up to for Thanksgiving." "I have plans," I stated. "Oh, with friends?" she asked, her tone light. "With family," I clarified. A beat of silence. "What family?" she pressed. "The family that actually wants to spend the holiday with me," I replied, and ended the call. I switched my phone to silent and returned to crafting what would become the most memorable Thanksgiving of our lives. Thanksgiving morning dawned crisp and clear. By 6, I was already moving through the quiet house, running a final mental checklist. In the kitchen, Marco was a whirlwind of purposeful activity, filling the air with the scent of herbs and roasting spices. The photographer arrived at 7, ready to document the day. The first guests, Uncle Frank and his wife Charlotte, pulled up at 9. They stepped out of their car and froze, staring up at the house. "My God, Scarlett," Uncle Frank breathed, his voice full of wonder. "All this is yours?" Every stone and pane of glass, I smiled, stepping forward to hug them both. Charlotte's eyes glistened. "This is incredible. I can't believe your parents chose to miss this." "Their loss." "And mine," I said, meaning it. Over the next 2 hours, the estate came alive with arrival after joyful arrival. Aunt Laura with her bustling family, cousins with their partners and children, my steadfast MIT friends who'd flown cross-country, former Cyber Shield team members who'd driven from Denver. I led them on tours through the sunlit main house, the cozy guest house, and the winding trails that showcased the vast property. People ran their hands over stone fireplaces and polished wood railings, as if to confirm it was all tangible. Children's delighted squeals echoed as they chased each other across the sprawling lawns. By noon, a contented hum had settled over the estate. Small groups dotted the hillsides on walks, others were clustered by the roaring fireplace, and a fascinated audience had gathered in the kitchen doorway, watching Chef Marco perform his culinary magic. At 2 o'clock, I gathered everyone in the main dining room. 2 long tables, set for 40, groaned under a feast that looked stolen from a glossy magazine. Golden brown turkeys, a honey-glazed ham, countless side dishes, warm rolls, and an array of decadent pies. I lifted my glass, and the room fell into a warm, expectant hush. "I want to thank you all, from the bottom of my heart, for being here," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "It means more than I can possibly express. Today, I wanted to celebrate with the people who truly choose to be in my life. I am so profoundly happy you're all here." Glasses were raised all around the table. Then Uncle Frank stood. "To Scarlett," he boomed, his voice thick with emotion, "who built a kingdom from a dream and had the generosity to share her castle with us." As we were about to toast, the distinct slam of a car door echoed outside. I glanced through the window to see a taxi retreating down the drive and a familiar, determined figure marching toward the front door. My heart leaped. I hurried out to meet her. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" She pulled me into a fierce, lavender-scented hug. "You think a little white lie and a confusing website would stop me? I told your parents I was under the weather and couldn't travel to Ohio. Then I bought my own ticket online. Managed the whole thing myself. Dinner was perfect. Not in a staged way, but in the deep, resonant way that comes from genuine connection. There was no tension, no stilted small talk, no one anxiously jumping up to manage children. The room was filled with the warm, overlapping sounds of easy conversation, shared laughter, and the clink of cutlery on fine china. Marco had, indeed, outdone himself. The food was sublime, and people happily returned for second and third helpings. Afterward, we lingered at the tables for a tradition of gratitude. Aunt Laura spoke of thankfulness for family that circles the wagons. Uncle Nicholas gave a nod to unexpected second chances. My MIT friends toasted friendship that time and distance can erode. Then, Grandma Isabella cleared her throat. All eyes turned to her. "I am thankful," she said, her clear voice carrying, "for the brave souls who blaze their own trail when the expected path doesn't fit. For those who persevere, even when the cheers from their own sidelines are silent. For those who create something beautiful from their own grit and grace, and then open the doors to share it." Her gaze, sharp and full of love, found mine across the table. I had to look down at my hands to compose myself. As the evening softened, guests drifted back across the property. The photographer captured candid groups by the fire, laughing clusters on the terrace, and the majestic backdrop of the house against the darkening mountains. Almost instantly, my phone began to pulse with notifications. Social media feeds blossomed with photos tagged at my estate. Best Thanksgiving on record at Scarlett's Colorado Paradise. Who needs Ohio when you've got these views? Grateful for family that shows up. The images were stunning, all glowing faces, elegant tablecapes, and breathtaking scenery. Later, I sat with Grandma Isabella on the porch, wrapped in blankets as we watched the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues. My phone vibrated with a new message. It was from Grace. "Beautiful house. Didn't know you were so rich. Mom and Dad are freaking out." I showed Grandma the screen. She let out a hearty, knowing laugh that turned into a brief cough. "Good," she said, patting my hand. A little shock to the system might do them some good. Much later, when most guests had retired, I sat in the living room with my inner circle. Embers glowed in the fireplace, wine glasses were half full, and the room was steeped in that deep, comfortable silence shared only with those who truly know you. "You did good, kid," my friend Amy said softly. You really did. Thanks, I murmured, staring into the fire. I wish it hadn't come to this. I wish they were here. They made a choice, Amy said, her tone gentle but firm. You made a different one. And yours was right. My phone rang, shattering the calm. My parents' name flashed on the caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. And again. The next morning, fortified by coffee and the lingering warmth of the previous day, I finally answered. Scarlett. My mother's voice was a blade of frantic energy. What in the world is happening? Why are there pictures all over Facebook of everyone at some mansion in Colorado with Grandma? We thought she was ill. She was ill, I replied calmly, of your Thanksgiving plans. So she came to mine. Your Thanksgiving? What are you talking about? You said you wanted it small. Just Grace's family. So I invited everyone you didn't. Uncle Nicholas, Aunt Laura, all the cousins. About 35 of us. We had a wonderful time. Silence hissed over the line. Where did you get the money for a place like that? She finally demanded, her tone a mix of confusion and accusation. I sold my company last year, I said. For $320 million. The silence that followed was profound. Then a muffled clatter, as if the phone had been fumbled. I heard my father's distant, alarmed voice. What is it? What's wrong? And then my mother's shrill, disembodied shriek. 320 million. Why didn't you tell us? I tried, I said, my voice even. Last Christmas. You were too preoccupied with Grace's son to listen. My father seized the phone. His voice was tight with anger. Was this some sort of vindictive spectacle? Dragging the entire family out there to shame us? This wasn't about you, I stated, my own calm surprising me. When Mom texted that I wasn't included, I simply made other plans. You've made us look like monsters. No, I corrected him softly. You did that when you uninvited 24 relatives for not being good enough for Stephen's family. I simply offered them a seat at my table. Suddenly, Grace's voice clamored in the background. She came on the line, her tone brittle. Scarlett, have you considered how this makes us look? Everyone is comparing our little dinner to your spectacle. Ours looks pathetic. That, I said with finality, is no longer my concern. From the doorway. Grandma Isabella's voice cut through, clear and commanding. Put them on speaker. I pressed the button. Mom? Are you there? My father asked, his anger momentarily checked. Of course I'm here, she replied. Where I belong. You've taken Scarlett for granted for decades, always pushing her to the background for Grace. That's why I'm in Colorado. Scarlett built an empire with her own mind and her own 2 hands, and you should be bursting with pride, not seething with jealousy. We're not jealous, my mother protested weakly, her voice shaking. Aren't you? Grandma countered, unwavering. You're ashamed, and you should be. Now the whole world can see what you've been blind to. This wasn't an act of spite. It was an act of love for the people who've shown her love in return. You should think long and hard about that. With that, she turned and left the room. I stood alone, holding the silent phone for a moment before my father's terse voice returned. We'll talk later. The line went dead. The rest of the weekend unfolded in a warm, easy blur. Relatives stayed on, filling the house with the sounds of board game debates, the crunch of hiking boots on frosty trails, and the shared laughter during movie nights in the home theater. Grandma Isabella held a quiet, steady court in the guest room, dispensing wisdom, sharing old stories, and offering the kind of hugs that mend unseen cracks in the soul. By Sunday, a gentle exodus began. By Monday evening, the grand estate was quiet once more, leaving just Grandma and me surrounded by the pleasant ghosts of laughter and celebration. We sat by the fire, steaming mugs of tea in hand. You did the right thing, you know, she said, her eyes reflecting the flames. I don't know, I sighed, the doubt creeping back in. Sometimes it feels less like strength and more like a grand, petty gesture. She fixed me with a look that brooked no argument. Nonsense. You were honest about your worth when they refused to see it. There is a world of difference between pettiness and honesty. Grandma stayed on for an extra week, a precious stretch of time that felt like a gift. We explored Denver's art galleries, dined at restaurants where the food was as exquisite as the conversation, and simply enjoyed each other's company, something we'd neglected for years. When it was finally time for her to leave, I arranged a first-class ticket. At the airport departure curb, she pulled me into a final, tight embrace and whispered firmly in my ear, "Now, you let them work for it. Let them earn their way back. Don't you dare make it easy." "I won't," I promised, my voice thick. A few days of silence passed before my phone buzzed with the first tentative reach across the chasm. It was from Grace. "I've always been jealous of you. You chose your own path. You fell and got back up. I've just been on rails my whole life, doing what Mom and Dad wanted. I'm sorry they never made time for you because of me. I didn't realize how bad it was." The words sat heavily on my screen. I read them a dozen times, weighing their sincerity against a lifetime of slights. Finally, I typed back, "Thank you for saying that." An hour later, a new message arrived, this time from my dad. "Grandma was right. We've been unfair to you. I'm proud of what you built. Proud of you." Another hour, and then my mom. "The house looks gorgeous in the pictures. Can we come see it?" I didn't reply immediately. I let the question hang in the Colorado air for several days, allowing myself to feel the full weight of what an invitation would mean. In early December, I sent my response, "Come for Christmas. Just you, Dad, and Grace." A small group. Their agreement was instantaneous. On December 23rd, a taxi wound its way up my drive. My parents and Grace emerged, and the scene mirrored the stunned arrival of my other guests months before. They stood rooted to the spot, staring. My father was the first to speak, his voice hushed. "Scarlett, this is unbelievable." The tour I gave was quiet and slow. They moved through the rooms as if in a museum, fingertips brushing against furniture, pausing for long minutes to gaze out the vast windows. The silence was heavy, but not entirely hostile. It was the silence of reassessment. In my office, my father stopped dead before the wall of framed accolades, the Forbes 30 Under 30 cover, the TechCrunch feature, the Business Insider spotlight. He reached out, almost touching the glass over the Forbes headline. When was this?" he asked. 3 years ago," I answered. His shoulders slumped slightly. "You never told us." "I tried," I said softly. "There was always something more immediate. A recital for Grace's kids. A promotion for Grace. You were never available to hear it." He didn't argue. He just nodded, his eyes downcast. Dinner that first night was a strained affair. Midway through, my mother abruptly set her fork down. The clink against the plate was startling in the quiet room. "We failed both of you," she said, the words seeming to cost her dearly. "We put all our expectations on Grace, made her carry the burden of being perfect, and we gave you nothing. No attention, no credit. We are so sorry, Scarlett." My father cleared his throat, struggling to find his voice. "I think we need to learn how to be a family all over again. All of us. We have to try to let the old wounds go." I looked at their faces, my mother's, etched with new lines of regret, my father's, hair more silver than I remembered, Grace's, shadowed with a weariness I now understood. "We can try," I said. And I meant it, even as a cold knot of fear tightened in my stomach. I was terrified this newfound humility was just a mask, a performance inspired by the revelation of my wealth. But as the days passed, they never asked for a thing, not a loan, not an investment, not a favor. The visit settled into a cautious, quiet rhythm. We took walks along snow-dusted paths, played classic board games by the fire, and watched nostalgic Christmas films. The awkwardness never fully dissipated, but it was punctuated by moments of genuine, unforced calm. On Christmas morning, their gifts to me told a new story. My parents presented me with books by authors they knew I cherished, titles that showed they'd been listening, however belatedly. My mother had also brought 2 small landscapes by a local Colorado artist she'd sought out specifically. Grace's gift was a commissioned painting of the Boston skyline at dusk. "You mentioned once how much you loved that view from your old apartment window," she said quietly. They were gifts of observation and thought, a stark departure from the generic tokens of past years. At our Christmas dinner, my mother raised her glass. Her hand shook slightly. "To new beginnings," she said. "And to Scarlett, who had the courage to carve her own path and the grace to invite us to walk a piece of it with her now. Afterward, as we bundled up for a final evening walk, my father pulled me into a brief, awkward hug. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I am proud of you. Not for the house or the money. For the person you became in spite of us." 2 days after Christmas, they departed. The farewell at the door was not effusive, but it was sincere, the warmest, most present goodbye we had ever shared. I stood on the porch, the cold air sharp in my lungs, and watched the red tail lights of their taxi vanish around the mountain bend. I didn't know if the fractures could ever fully heal, or if we would ever find an easy, uncomplicated love. But a first, fragile step had been taken. Now, I speak with Grandma Isabella twice a week, her wisdom a steady anchor. Grace and I exchange texts every few days, sometimes trivial, sometimes meaningful. My parents call once a week, their conversations no longer just updates on Grace's family, but genuine inquiries into my life and world. It is not a perfect, storybook reconciliation. The history is too long, the scars too deep for that. But it is something real. It is effort where there was once only neglect. It is, for now, enough.